You have this phrase, just keep breathing.
Yeah, well, that is
Breathe
that
in.
is that is how that's like my answer to many things. It's like, "Oh, you don't see?" I encourage you to try to stay alive so that you
Yeah,
can see. Keep breathe every opportunity you have, breathe so that you can then come to levels of greater awareness.
I'm breathing
That
right now. Look, seriously, when you say, I'm just like, do a deep breath. Let's breathe into the circle. Breathe the life in.
One thing toxic people can't stand is someone who won't engage in their drama and contention. So if you take the high road, they'll accuse you of being self-righteous or of thinking you're better than them. They'll literally mock your goodness, which is a highly manipulative way to get you to go into the mud with them. They literally cannot understand that you truly don't think the way they do. So they assume that beneath that facade of goodness, there's the same venom that runs through their veins.
Welcome to Call for the Truth. I am LaOta of the Sun, and I'm here today with Tarvars of the Sun, and we will be talking about belief systems and what happens to you as a result of your belief system. But before we begin, Tarvars, will you bring us into the Call for Truth?
Most certainly. And at this time, shall we call forth the frequency of truth? Shall we call to see the truth in all that we see? Shall we call to hear the truth in all that we hear? Shall we call to speak the truth? Shall we call forth the courage to speak the truth? Shall we call forth nothing less than the truth to come forward into our experience? And we are here today, Call for the Truth podcast with LaOta of the Sun. And we want to encourage you all, if you're chiming in, you like what we're doing here, hit that like, subscribe, and that bell notification to stay in tune with these truth conversations. And so today, we're talking about how belief systems infringe upon free will. How there are people who subscribe to a certain way of life, and they will use shame, guilt, coercion to manipulate you into adopting their way of life. That sounds stupid. It's like, you think I'm going to get on board with that? And it usually doesn't work, but at the same time, sometimes it does. People acquiesce to the control. So we're going to be exploring that. And I know we can go in a lot of different directions. There are several things that come to mind, such as politics, religion, even food and health lifestyles. But where would you like to begin with this?
I think this idea deserves our attention, and it happens in every aspect of our experience, and it has happened historically through every period of time. The idea that a large concept that is well adopted by many, whether it's religion, whether it's how you marry and who you marry and how that comes about, whether it's about how you rear your children and is it appropriate for certain things to happen. How do you have your baby and how do you think about that? Should the husband be there? Should the husband not be there? All of these things, whether people actually nurse or they bottle feed, these are all areas in which there are people who adhere to certain particulars concerning it and choose to um, worship at the altar of whatever that construct is. And they are most comfortable if everyone else is in agreement with it. So we recently saw it with medical interventions where people were on television saying, well, if you won't do this, then you shouldn't get groceries and your children shouldn't be allowed to go to school. This is a huge um, area in which we all were able to see an egregore or a morphic field that was backed up by the establishment that allowed everyone to get on board with whatever side of it they wanted to. And there was pain and suffering if there was no agreement. Like, well, then you can't have this, or you can't go there, or you won't be able to eat at this restaurant, or you'll have to eat outside and not inside. So these constructs that humanity adopts through varying periods, some are invisible to us. This is one that was very recent, so we can all remember it. But some of them have to do with, you can only marry someone who their parents come from this province, or who are particular to this religion, or you can only, have your children a certain way and teach them certain things. So these are large constructs that often end up bullying the population into submission. Sometimes they know it, sometimes they don't, sometimes they're born into it, sometimes they arrive at it and they're not congruent with it. And then they're always on the outskirts of the black sheep of the situation. But the press of the majority, or the mob, or the family, or the church, or the policies presses people into submission through punishment. And this happens in our homes, with our children, and with our partners. It happens with our parents, and it happens in the larger dynamic. And it's unfortunate because we live in a free choice universe where the lessons are already built in.
So this is a fascinating thing because from the outside looking in, it appears as though it doesn't make sense to operate in such a way where I'm going to use force, coercion, fear to get the person to do what I want them to do. But that's all we know. I can see that, again, using the 2020 example, I think that's a great universal example because everyone experienced it. So that reference point is strong. But one of the things that you shared, people feeling more comfortable, others would get on board with their idea. And I feel like there's something there that's worth exploring because what is it within the individual that is bothered by the other person being, I don't even want to say disagreement because it's not always disagreement, but they're just doing them. It doesn't require someone else to live the same exact lifestyle.
Right.
For some reason, there's things like the need for outside validation. I'm seeing a lot of solar plexus sacral imbalances that are expressed as this way. But could you speak a little bit about like going deep into like what is that thing within us that feels the need out of our fear to make somebody get on board to co-sign what we're doing?
It's so interesting. I have my own example. I have had an alternate eating lifestyle for many, many decades. And it is not what I was brought up with, and it is not what my family was aligned with. However, it was my own choice, and I chose to do it individually and privately, meaning I didn't encourage anyone who wasn't one of my children to do it. If you weren't living in my house, you didn't need to do it. So when I would go and visit, it was always considered, the implication is, oh, you think you're doing something that's better than what we're doing. And the reality is, I did think that. I did think that I was doing something better for me than the disease-ridden family that I had, what their responses were. However, I was not in the mode of trying to evangelize it. I was like, I will eat at your house, but this is what I'll eat. I won't be eating this. I won't be eating that. I won't be eating this. But if you've got some salad and something else, I'll eat that. And if not, I'll bring my food. But that was an offense. I considered that offensive to the affront that how dare not be willing to eat whatever would be made available without my knowing what it was. And so and so there it works on both sides. So often what happens is when people study and learn things, and I studied for many years and I wrote several books about food. And after my study, I was deeply in the practical application of what I had learned. And I had studied many healers and many other people. And I didn't have an expectation that others who weren't interested in that topic would be wanting to do what I was doing because it seemed extreme 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem extreme now. Now, many people are doing something similar and making choices like that. But this was, I was forerunner in that idea. And the understanding I had was that people were challenged by my unwillingness to do what they were doing. So the way that I solved it is I ate before I got there, or I would eat after I left, or I bring my own food, or I'd navigate a restaurant however would work for me at
Yes.
varying levels of my own understanding, which changed over the years, by the way.
Yeah, I have a question for you because there's two things that are floating in my mind, but I'll ask you this first since we're on the topic of it. There's two sides to it. There's their feeling of what I sense some level of competition and comparison more so. Like, oh, they're doing this, so that must mean that I'm less than because they don't want whatever I have to give. So there's insecurity issues there. But of course, there's that. But the idea of how the person on the receiving end deals with that, you being the person who eats different, uh, uniquely, you're not evangelizing it because that's the thing that we often see. And this was actually the second thing I wanted to share. I actually was one of those people too, where, well, not two, but I was one of them. I wasn't a non-evangelist. I was an evangelist for veganism and eating right and uh, putting away the religion and things. And it was interesting because when I look back at it, the behavior was not one of where it was inviting for people or welcoming. It was along the lines of condemnation, judgment, shaming them, thinking that that's going to help them make a better decision from inspired low frequency motivation. And so there's that. But then you have people like yourself who you're not evangelizing. How did you deal with the confrontation and the people being bothered by your lifestyle?
I actually touched on it. It was the deep, intense study and clarity of knowingness. I was not in a belief system. I did not believe that if I ate something, it would make me one thing or another. I had great knowingness of how the body works and what the chemistry of the body will do. And then I had the evidence of having um, saved my own son
Mm,
because of his health issues, and then making sure that in my own life, those who I was interacting with, the evidence of what I was doing was very clear to me. So I wasn't in belief. So I was fine with knowing that I knew that I knew that I knew. I didn't have to make anyone else know because my health proved my point. My
ah,
clarity, my mental acuity, my ability to make sure that others who came to me were better because of it. That I didn't, my value in myself grew through my clarity of my knowingness. So there was no fear. What they had, what they showed me, I found irrelevant to my own children who I knew I had, my own health, the things that had happened in my own life that I had overcome or that I had avoided or that others had brought their children to me and we avoided. The things that were clearly headed in a certain direction, the things that people said were incurable, my knowingness supported me. It didn't require someone's agreement. I don't require your agreement to be correct in my own feeding of myself.
If you're a conscious investor looking to make a difference, you need to hear about Aluca Gold. Because doing good and doing well isn't just a dream, it's our promise. Let's face it, everyone wants their money to work harder. But what if your gold investment could do double duty? Aluca Gold is more than just precious metal. We're committed to ethical sourcing and total transparency so you know exactly where your gold comes from, and who it helps. Every ounce you invest helps support real miners and their communities with humanitarian projects and fair wages. That's not just good business, it's good for the world. You get solid, physical gold, plus the pride of knowing your investment brings hope and opportunity to families who need it most. So why settle for ordinary returns when you can spark extraordinary change? Invest with purpose. Invest with Aluca Gold. Do good, do well, and let your gold investment shine brighter than ever.
So this is the point that I'm looking to explore because we have seen with clients, we have seen even with people who comment on the platform and in the live chat, we were talking about, I think it was ancestry and people dealing with their families being one way and then they're the black sheep going in another direction and wanting their families to do better or wanting someone to do better and then they're all wrapped up. And I have seen, I've spoken with clients about this where sometimes people who are even in positions of authority or like you're a healer or a practitioner or a coach, and through your overwhelming desire for someone to be great, we end up really manipulating them or trying to dictate and control them instead of, which is a misuse of energy. It's a form of enslavement on both ends. But again, I can see where it's like we don't quite see that taking place as humans. It's as though there's just an overwhelming desire. It's funny because it's on both ends of the coin. You know, the people who, if we're going to use health for example, people who are eating mac and cheese and ribs and whatever else that's in that category, and then you have the flip side of those who are eating quinoa and probably just crunching on celery, hold the ranch, and both parties are in this tussle of see me and be part of what I am. You know, so I can see where, in a sense, there's a match, but then there's also, I guess I would say, well, not guess, but I'd say it's just the condition of people on the planet because it seems like we're always seeking for validation because, and I think this is the point that you made, we just don't know that we know. It's as though getting the other person to be on board with what we got going on gives us the validation that we should be seeking from within. That's my takeaway from what you're saying.
Everything has its own reward. So my point of view is that you will see from your actions the reward of what happens.
Mm.
And then those who are doing something different, you will see the contrast. And that I have lived through that experience of if um, if my experience of good health can show you the way, good. If it requires me to tie you up and force feed you something you don't want to eat, then it's not good for any of us.
That part.
So I really see that it's necessary that we allow people to come to the levels of clarity and love of self. I have developed over decades something I didn't have as a child. I developed a love and value of self. So there are certain things I will not expose certain toxins and levels of anti-life and darkness I won't expose myself to willingly
Yeah.
because I love myself. And I want to teach my children and my grandchildren to love themselves enough to not get up with fleas, so to say.
Mhm.
The idea that if you are clean in your thoughts and deeds, then your food should follow. If you love and care for self, then there should be some love and care for what goes in self. It's the same idea. I've been using this for decades that everything is its own reward. You don't clean up the bathroom, then what crawls out of that in 5 or 6 years is your reward. You know what? It's the reward. If you treat your body like a kitchen you don't want to clean up, if you just keep putting things in the garbage disposal and never turn it on, if these things have their own reward, they eventually lead to what they're made of, what its resonating energy is. And
Yeah.
if it's resonating energy will keep you alive and keep you healthy and keep you vibrant and keep you well, you can you can safely say that's good for you. And if it takes you into depression and sadness and weakness and different varying levels of people having to manipulate your body or cut pieces off of it, that should show you that direction.
Mm.
So I don't have to evangelize it because it is its own answer. It answers its own equal sign, its own
Yeah,
equation.
that makes total sense. And it's as though we will see it as time unfolds, it reveals itself. And you have this phrase, just keep breathing.
Yeah, well, that is
Breathe
that
in.
is that is how that's like my answer to many things is like, "Oh, you don't see? I encourage you to try to stay alive so that you
Yeah,
can see. Keep breathe every opportunity you have, breathe so that you can then come to levels of greater awareness."
I'm breathing
That
right now. When you look seriously, when you say, I'm just like, do a deep breath. Let's breathe into the circle. Life in.
the
I
idea that this planet has been we have this is a prison planet. We have been enslaved. We are trapped in a reincarnational system. We have two strands of DNA in a third dimensional world. And this is a limitation that we can overcome if we don't follow the tide, if we will do something different.
Yes. So a lot of what I'm gathering from what you're sharing is honoring freedom for self and for others. Recognizing, look, I'm free to do this. I'm free to eat or engage in this knowingness that I have of life, even if it's different from your understanding that you have of life. And you are, kind sir or kind ma'am, free to do such a thing as well. So how, before we wrap up, you have any recommendations for people to move into that space? Because that's, again, where the difficulty, there's the impulse to enslave a person
Yeah.
and wrap them up, as you say, that visual is so clear. I'm like, get out of here with get out of here with this. So you have any final recommendations for people to offset that and align with freedom and free will?
Yes, I'd like to encourage people to examine their judgments,
Mm,
examine their condemnations of others, examine where is that coming from. They are your other self. Did we forget that they are us? That if we enslave and imprison and short circuit their exploration to their own learning, that we do the same to ourselves. I
mm,
encourage everyone to consider, what are you in judgment about? Is it who somebody sleeps with or what their lifestyle is? Or are you in judgment because they're not living the exalted life you think they should be living? What is it? Is it their food lifestyle? What thing is it that makes you be triggered by another person and then recognize it is the person who's triggered who has the problem?
that's right. It's you, you the problem. For real. Good
So
stuff.
that's what I'm thinking about it. So are you ready to do a card pull?
Yes, and so we're gonna be asking the cards today to share with us the truth that we need to see regarding not infringing on people's free will.
Well, yes, this idea of, can we be free if we imprison and enslave others? Can we then be free? Can we be free to choose our own food if we're telling other people they can't eat something and they have not yet come to that?
No, we cannot. If I'm gonna say B, no. Final answer. Back that up with today's card pool. It's so on point. It is acceptance. Heart chakra. Be like a child. Get over it. Keep moving. Enough said.
That is great. Thank you so much. We thank you all for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again for another discussion and call for the truth. We leave you with honor, respect, and gratitude in Lakesh, oneness, and truth, Veritas. Thank you.